15 years had passed since I last saw the old ryokan. It stood on a lonely hillside near the Daishoji River, hidden behind a line of cedar trees that never stopped whispering. My family used to own it, a sprawling wooden inn built before I was even born. When I was a child, the place had been full of life. Lanterns glowed in the hallways, guests shuffled in slippers along the tatami floors, and my grandmother's voice carried through the thin paper doors. But time does strange things to places like that. When I returned that winter, all that was left was silence. It was snowing heavily when I arrived. The roads were narrow, half buried in white, and by the time I reached the entrance, dusk had already swallowed the forest. The building leaned slightly now, its wood darkened and swollen from decades of humidity. No lights, no caretakers, just the faint creak of old beams adjusting to the cold. I let myself in with one of the spare keys my father had given me. The air inside was colder than outside. The smell of cedar mixed with something faintly metallic, not rot exactly, but old, like forgotten rain. I walked the halls with my phone's flashlight. The tatami mats were warped, the paper doors brittle. But every few steps, I'd feel it, a slight vibration through the floorboards, as if something beneath the building still moved. My father once told me the ryokan was built over ancient ground. When they laid the foundations, workers had found stone blocks and pillars, remnants of a shrine dating back to the 9th century. He said the locals called the area Kami no Nimuri, the sleeping god's hill. Back then, I laughed it off. But standing there now, surrounded by silence thick enough to hum, the name felt right. I slid open the doors to the main hall. The view outside was ghostly, a sea of snow and trees. The river below glimmered faintly, frozen in places. For a moment, it was beautiful, peaceful. Then I noticed something odd. Near the back veranda, where the snow had piled unevenly, there were footprints. Small, narrow, barefoot, leading away from the building, straight into the forest. I stepped outside. The air burned my lungs. The prints were fresh, sharp-edged in the snow. I followed them a short distance until they vanished near a fallen torii gate, half buried in ice. That's when I remembered something my father said long ago about the kami that once guarded this hill. He told me it wasn't a god of mercy, but of containment, something worshipped not to be loved, but to be kept asleep. The wind shifted, carrying with it a sound I couldn't place, a deep, rhythmic pulse, like a slow heartbeat coming from underground. It lasted only a few seconds, then stopped. I stood there, surrounded by the sound of falling snow, trying to tell myself it was just my imagination, just the ground settling, just the cold playing tricks. But when I turned back to the ryokan, one of the upstairs windows, the room I used to sleep in, was faintly glowing from within. I hadn't turned on any lights. The next morning, the sky was gray, a kind of dull color that makes everything feel frozen in time. I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faint light in the upstairs window. But when I went to check after midnight, the room was dark again. I told myself it must have been moonlight or reflection. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me through those thin paper walls. After breakfast, a cup of instant noodles and silence, I decided to explore the forest behind the ryokan. That was where my father said the shrine ruins might still be. The snow was deep, reaching up to my ankles, crunching with each step. The deeper I went, the quieter the world became. The sound of the river faded first, then the wind. At some point, it was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. After about an hour, I reached the slope behind the hill. The trees grew closer together here, their roots like veins crawling through the snow. That's when I saw it, a break in the hillside, half covered by branches and frost. A cave. It was small at first glance, barely tall enough to crawl through. But the air coming from inside was warm, humid, wrong for winter. I hesitated, then turned on my flashlight and ducked in. The entrance opened into a small alcove. The walls were slick with condensation, covered in streaks of black mold. The smell hit me instantly, thick, earthy, like something that had been buried too long. In the center of the alcove sat a stone block, rectangular, perfectly carved. I brushed away a layer of mud and realized it wasn't a rock. It was an altar. Someone had etched faint markings along the sides, symbols older than any writing I recognized. As I circled around it, the beam of my flashlight caught something inside the hollow. Bones. Human bones. Laid neatly inside the block, surrounded by a ring of bronze coins, each with a square hole through the center. There was also a long strip of rusted metal resting across the bones. A sword, maybe. I should have left right then. But curiosity makes fools of us all. I reached down and picked up one of the coins. It was cold, heavier than it looked. The edges were worn smooth by time. The moment I touched it, the air changed. That faint humidity thickened, sour, animalistic, like something exhaled from deep in the cave. Then, from somewhere behind the altar, came a sound. A single thump. Then another. Rhythmic, slow, like a heartbeat. My flashlight flickered. "Hello?" I said before I could stop myself. My voice didn't echo. It just vanished into the dark, swallowed hole. Another thump, louder this time. The smell grew stronger, mixed now with a burnt edge, like smoldering incense. I backed away, clutching the coin tightly. My hand trembled, but I couldn't drop it. Then came the whisper. It wasn't clear at first, just a shape of sound, the breath of a word. Then it formed again, soft and deliberate, right behind me. N-A-Z-E ... Sawada no? Why? Did you touch it? The voice was female, old, sad. I turned, swinging the flashlight toward the sound, but there was nothing there. Just the narrow tunnel leading deeper into the hill, and a thin veil of smoke drifting from its mouth. The floor trembled beneath my feet. Dust fell from the ceiling. I ran. My shoulder slammed against the entrance as I crawled out into the snow. I didn't stop until I was halfway down the slope, gasping for air, the cave shrinking behind me. When I finally looked back, I froze. The entrance was smaller now, not buried, not collapsed, but closing. The earth seemed to pulse once, then settle. And just before the opening sealed, a faint glow shone from inside, the color of embers. Then, nothing. I looked at my hand. The coin was still there, burning cold against my skin. By the time I reached the ryokan, the light was gone from the sky. Snow had begun to fall again, thicker this time, swallowing the forest in a curtain of white. I stumbled through the entrance, shoes soaked, heart still pounding from the run. Inside, everything was the same as before. Still, silent. Too silent. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and leaned against the wall. My breath fogged in the air like smoke. That's when I realized I was still holding the coin. It had left a faint red mark on my palm. A perfect square, the hole in its center burned into my skin. I wanted to throw it away, but something stopped me. Some part of me felt like if I let it go, she would notice. The hours that followed were heavy, unreal. I tried to distract myself, made tea, lit a candle, sat by the old hearth where my grandmother used to tell stories. But every sound felt wrong. The crackle of the fire echoed too long. The wood groaned above me like footsteps pacing the upper floor. At one point, I thought I heard the sliding of a shiji door in the hallway. Chic, soft, slow, deliberate. I froze. "Hello?" I called out, though my voice came out thin and brittle. No answer. just the whisper of wind under the eaves. Then, faintly, beneath the sound of the snowstorm, a dull, rhythmic thump. It came from far away at first, then closer. A steady beat, low and deep, like someone hitting a hollow drum under the floor. The same rhythm I'd heard in the cave. I stood, every instinct screaming to leave. But as I turned toward the front door, something caught my eye. Through the paper walls of the main hall, shadows moved, soft and flickering, like silhouettes walking past a lantern. I hadn't lit any lanterns. I crept to the window and slid it open a few inches. Outside, the forest glowed faintly orange, dozens of tiny flames swaying among the trees. Lanterns. Old ones, their light dim and trembling, like breath. Figures moved between them, slow, almost graceful. Their shapes were human, but too still, their movements too even. Like puppets. One of them stopped near the edge of the hill and turned toward me. Even from a distance, I could tell it was a woman, her white robe fluttering in the snow, her face hidden beneath a veil of black hair. She didn't move, didn't blink. And yet somehow I felt her gaze. Then, from behind her, came that whisper again. Faint, carried on the wind, impossible and near all at once. Return it. I slammed the window shut. I don't remember packing. I just remember running. Through the hall, past the old portraits on the walls, faces that seemed to follow as I moved. When I reached the front door, the candle went out behind me. The darkness was absolute. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking until the lock finally gave way. Outside, the snow was almost knee-deep. I ran down the hill, breath ragged, not daring to look back. When I reached the road, I turned once more toward the ryokan. It was glowing, not from within, but beneath. A faint red light pulsed from the ground under the building, like something buried there was waking up. And in that light, through the drifting snow, I saw her, the woman from the forest, standing at the doorway. She raised her hand slowly, palm open. Something small and dark gleamed in her grasp. The coin. I don't remember driving back to Kanazawa. I only remember the sound of that drumbeat, faint at first, then fading as the mountains disappeared behind me. Weeks later, my father sent me a message. Someone had broken into the ryokan. Nothing was stolen, he said. Nothing damaged, except for one thing, the door to my room. It had been smashed open, splintered from the outside, as if something heavy had tried to force its way in. I stared at the message for a long time, then looked down at my hand. The burn mark was gone. But in its place, faintly pressed into the skin, was an imprint, a perfect circle where the coin once rested. And when I held my palm to my ear, I could still hear it. That slow, steady thump, coming from deep, deep underground. Back in high school, we had this spot no one else knew about. An old baseball field, tucked behind the ruins of an abandoned elementary school, forgotten by the town, swallowed by the woods. The bleachers were rusted, the grass grew uneven, and the air always smelled faintly of iron and rain. But to us, it was perfect. We'd sneak out there almost every summer night. Me, Johnny, Tim, and a few others. We'd sit under that single flickering lamppost, the only one that still worked, glowing this deep orange hue, the kind of color that made everything look half dead, half dreaming. That light made the world feel smaller, like it trapped us inside its dim halo. Beyond it, the woods were pitch black, endless. You couldn't see a thing past the fence line. Sometimes, when we'd go quiet, I could hear something moving out there. The kind of sound that doesn't belong to an animal or the wind, something slower, patient. But we always brushed it off. When you're 17, you think nothing can touch you. For most of us, that field was more than just a hangout. Tim's mom was a nightmare. She'd call the cops on him over nothing. Johnny's dad was barely around. My home wasn't much better. So, the field became a kind of refuge. No teachers. No parents, no rules. Just the quiet hum of summer cicadas and the soft crackle of a lighter passing between friends. Johnny was always the heart of it. He was the kind of guy who made silence feel less awkward. Always laughing, always telling stories. But there was something in him too, a restlessness. Sometimes, when everyone else was talking, he'd just stare into the woods like he was listening for something. Once, I asked him what he saw out there. He said, "Nothing. Just feels like the woods are breathing, you know." I laughed it off, but it stuck with me. There was one night I can't forget. It must have been close to midnight. The lamp was dimmer than usual, buzzing like it was struggling to stay alive. Johnny was sitting on the top bleacher, his silhouette sharp against the orange glow. He looked at me and said, "Do you ever wonder why no one's torn this place down?" I said maybe the town just didn't care. He shook his head. "No, it's like it doesn't want to be torn down." That's Johnny for you. Always dramatic. But then he said something that didn't sound like a joke. What if there's a reason the light's still on? I remember laughing, but deep down, it made my skin crawl. Because that lamp had been burning for as long as I could remember. Nobody maintained it. Nobody even knew it was there. From then on, every time I looked at that orange light, I felt uneasy. Like maybe it wasn't there to help us see. Maybe it was there so something else could see us. Sometimes when we sat in silence, I'd catch the reflection of eyes from the tree line. Probably raccoons, I'd tell myself. But there was always this feeling, like whatever was watching didn't blink. One night, when everyone else had left early, I stayed behind to finish a joint. The field was empty except for the hum of the light and the chirping of crickets. I leaned back against the bleachers and looked up at the lamp. It buzzed, flickered once, and went out. For a few seconds, the darkness was absolute. I could hear my own breathing. Then, just before the light came back, I swear, I heard footsteps on the gravel behind me. Slow, crunching, stopping. When the light flicked on again, there was nothing there. Just the field, silent and orange once more. I packed up and left early that night. Didn't tell anyone. But I started noticing little things afterward. The sound of movement in the woods that stopped when I turned my head. Footprints in the dirt that didn't match ours. The lamp flickering whenever we joked about ghosts or the school's past. Johnny said once that maybe the old school wasn't really abandoned, that maybe someone still lived in it. He said it like a joke, but his voice cracked when he said it. I didn't think much of it back then, but looking back now, I think he knew something the rest of us didn't. That field, our sanctuary, started to feel different after that summer, like the air got heavier every time we came. The laughter quieter, the woods closer. And though none of us would admit it, we all felt it, that invisible line between our world and whatever waited beyond the trees was thinning. And on one particular summer night, that line finally broke. But that is a story for another part. It happened on one of those thick, humid nights when the air itself feels alive, like the world's holding its breath. Johnny texted me around 9. He said, "Heading to the field. Might be a bit late. Wait up." I told him sure, I'd bring a pack of smokes, and maybe a 6-pack if I could sneak it out of the fridge. By the time I got there, the town was silent. Even the cicadas seemed tired. The school loomed in the distance, a jagged black outline against a starless sky. I parked by the old chain-link fence, grabbed my lighter, and started the short walk through the woods that led to the field. It was a path I knew by heart, but that night, every step sounded too loud, too heavy. The orange lamp at the bleachers was already on, humming softly like it always did. The light stretched over the rusted benches, dying out right where the grass met the dark wall of trees. No sign of Johnny. I waited. 10 minutes, then 20. I lit up, sitting on the bottom bleacher, watching the smoke twist in the orange haze. It's strange how silence can start to feel like sound when it goes on too long. The hum of the lamp, the soft ticking of metal cooling in the night, the way your heartbeat becomes the only rhythm left, all of it starts to blur together until you think you hear something else hiding underneath. I checked my phone. No new messages. 11:32 p.m. I told myself maybe he ran into his mom again. Another fight. Another reason for the cops to show up at his place. So I waited longer. At some point, I realized I wasn't waiting for him anymore. I was listening. There was a faint crunch from the far end of the field. It wasn't close, but close enough that I could hear the rhythm. Step, pause, step, pause. I froze, squinting into the darkness beyond the light's reach. Nothing moved. The orange glow stopped just before the chain-link fence, leaving everything beyond it black and endless. My heart started racing. I told myself it was an animal, probably, maybe. But I couldn't shake the image of someone just standing there, right at the edge of the dark, watching. I called Johnny's name once, my voice cracking halfway through. It didn't echo. The sound just disappeared into the air. That's when I heard something else. Laughter. Soft. Too soft. Like someone trying not to be heard. I stood up, scanning the field, my eyes darting from the trees to the bleachers to the fence line. Nothing. And yet the laughter kept going, fading in and out, like wind slipping through metal. I grabbed my backpack and started walking toward the path back to my car, faster and faster. Every instinct in me screamed that something wasn't right. When I reached the trees, I looked back once more. That single lamp was still glowing, still humming. And for just a second, I thought I saw movement behind the bleachers. A shadow, slow and human-shaped. Then it stopped. I ran. Branches scratched my arms as I pushed through the path, not caring how loud I was now. The forest felt endless, longer than it ever had before. By the time I reached the parking lot, I was drenched in sweat. Johnny's car wasn't there. I waited 10 minutes, trying to calm down. Then 20. Texted him again. Called twice. Nothing. At some point, I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe he never planned to come. Maybe I'd mixed up the time. I drove home. The next morning, I woke to sunlight stabbing through the blinds and the sound of my mom calling from the kitchen. She asked if I'd seen Johnny. That single question froze me. Apparently, he hadn't come home at all. His mom called the police. His phone was off. No one had seen him since the night before. I told them I'd last talked to him around 9 and that we were supposed to meet at the field. The cops took notes, nodded, asked the usual questions. Had he seemed upset? Was he using anything? Did he talk about running away? I said no to all of it, because Johnny wasn't like that. The following days blurred together. Posters, calls, volunteers combing the woods. I joined some of the searches myself. Each time I stepped into that forest, I half expected to see the orange glow of the lamp through the trees. But when we got there, it was off. Dead. The cops said maybe the bulb finally burned out, but something about that didn't sit right with me. We searched the bleachers, the field, even parts of the old school. Nothing. No signs of struggle. No clothes, no tire tracks. Just the empty field, silent, still, and wrong. A week passed, then another. Eventually, everyone stopped looking. But I couldn't. There's a kind of guilt that settles into your bones when someone disappears right after you last saw them. It's not sharp like pain. It's heavy, quiet, constant. Sometimes I'd drive by the school at night and see the faint orange glow through the trees again. The light that was supposed to be dead I never went back. Not yet, but I knew I would. I could feel it pulling me, like the field itself wanted me to return. And when I finally did, I found out the truth, or at least part of it. The night I saw them. The night I realized Johnny wasn't the only one who vanished there. It took me nearly a month before I found the courage to go back. Summer was ending, the nights cooler, quieter. Most of my friends had already accepted that Johnny was gone. Some said he ran away. Others whispered darker things. But I couldn't move on. Something about that field had its claws in me. So one night, when the moon was high and the streets were empty, I drove there alone. The woods felt different this time, heavier somehow, as if the air itself was watching. Every step through the dry leaves echoed too loud. By the time I reached the clearing, I was drenched in sweat even though it wasn't hot. And then I saw them. 3 figures sitting on the bleachers, perfectly still. Their bodies were stiff, their heads slightly bowed. I thought maybe I was hallucinating, but the lamp, that cursed orange lamp, flickered back to life, humming faintly. Its light spilled across the field, revealing them in full. They weren't anyone I knew. 2 men and 1 woman, dressed in clothes that looked wrong, old-fashioned maybe. Their faces were pale, unmoving, like masks. And then, near the center of the field, was another figure, dancing. His movements were erratic, spinning, skipping, waving his arms in jagged patterns, as if the air around him was thick, and he was fighting through it. At first, I thought he was drunk, or high, or crazy. But when he laughed, I froze. It was the same laughter I'd heard that night Johnny disappeared. That soft, broken, too quiet laugh. He kept twirling, his face lit by the lamp's glow, and that's when I realized why he felt familiar. I'd seen that face before. I didn't know where, not yet, but my stomach turned in recognition. Like when you see someone in a dream and wake up remembering only the eyes. I stepped back, barely breathing. The dancing man stopped. His head tilted slowly toward me, as though he'd known I was there all along. The others on the bleachers didn't move, didn't even blink, and then he smiled. I ran. I don't remember the path, or how many times I tripped, or how long I was running. I just remember bursting out of the trees into the parking lot, my car barely visible in the dark. I fumbled for the keys, shaking so hard they slipped from my hand. That's when I noticed the car parked near the back of the lot. It was a small silver sedan, dust-covered but familiar. Johnny's model. I froze. And before I could process it, the headlights blinked on, 2 beams slicing through the dark, directly at me. I jumped into my car and floored it out of there. My heart was beating so fast, it drowned out everything else. For days, I couldn't sleep. When I finally told my friends what I saw, they brushed it off as grief or paranoia. "You've been thinking about Johnny too much," they said. "You're seeing things." Maybe they were right. But then, something happened that proved otherwise. A week later, I was flipping through my old yearbook, just trying to distract myself. And there, in the background of a photo from sophomore year, I saw him. The dancing man. He wasn't a student. He wasn't a teacher either. He was standing behind the baseball team, broom in hand, wearing a gray janitor's uniform. A school janitor. That was him. I remembered the face instantly now. The sunken eyes, the faint smile, the way his hair was slicked back too neatly. I told the police. They ran his name, but the records came up empty. No address, no social security, no next of kin. It was like he'd never existed. But I knew he had, because I saw him again. It was late August, a few days before school started again. I'd stopped at a Dunkin' Donuts after a long drive, exhausted, zoned out, waiting for my order. The bell over the door jingled, and someone stepped in. I didn't notice at first, but when I looked up, it was him. The janitor. The dancing man. He was older now, maybe. Or maybe I was just seeing him under real light for the first time. He stood near the counter, hands in his pockets, that faint smile still frozen on his face. Our eyes met. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming again, that none of it was real, that grief had made me lose my mind. But then he nodded at me, like we shared a secret. I dropped my coffee. He turned, walked out the door, and got into a car waiting outside. I ran after him, bursting out of the shop just in time to see the car pull away. I only caught a glimpse of the license plate, 4PAC 207. Johnny's plate. The world spun. My legs gave out. He'd been driving Johnny's car all alone. The same car I'd seen at the school that night, painted maybe, but the same plate. The same sound of the engine. I never saw him again. Not in town, not in any police report, not even in my dreams. But sometimes, when I drive by the edge of the woods near the old school, I swear I see that faint orange glow through the trees. And if I look too long, I can almost make out a figure standing under it. Still, watching. Some nights, I hear faint laughter when I pass that road. They say grief makes you imagine things. But I don't think that's what this is, because the field is still there. The lamp is still burning. And somewhere in the dark, Johnny's still waiting, with the man who took his face. It was the summer of 2024, and the heat in Florida felt like it could melt bone. We were 4 interns working at the Kennedy Space Center. 4 overworked, caffeine-fueled future engineers who'd spent weeks buried under rocket telemetry and endless data logs. So when Marcus said, "Man, I just want to see real stars again," we all laughed, but we knew he was right. Jake, the chill one, suggested we drive out to a dark sky zone. No city lights, no noise, just us and the universe. Sam, who was obsessed with legends and weird folklore, found a place on Google Maps that looked perfect. A remote clearing deep inside Tate's Hell State Forest, tucked away in the Florida Panhandle. It was a strange name. Tate's Hell. When I asked what it meant, Sam told the story like a campfire tale. Back in the 1800s, there was this guy, Seed Tate, who went hunting in those swamps. Got lost for weeks. When he finally crawled out, covered in mud and bites, he said, "My name's Seed Tate, and I just came from hell." Then he died right there. Marcus rolled his eyes. Perfect spot for a NASA getaway. We all laughed, but something about the name stuck with me. We left work on Friday evening, cars packed with snacks, blankets, and a telescope. 2 vehicles, my Tesla Model Y and Marcus's Mustang GT. The plan was simple. Drive north for 7 hours, crash at a small Airbnb near the town of Apalachicola, and drive out to the clearing for stargazing. We didn't plan on camping overnight. We figured we'd be back before dawn. It was already dark by the time we hit the forest's edge. The air outside was thick, heavy with that swamp smell, part wet earth, part decay. As we rolled down the windows, the sound of crickets and frogs swarmed in, louder than anything I'd heard before. There were no street lights, no signs of life, just a narrow dirt road winding through walls of pines and black water. We lost cell service about 20 minutes in. "Man, this place is unreal," Jake said, leaning out the window with his camera. "Like the kind of spot where you find bodies in documentaries." "Shut up," Sam muttered through the walkie-talkie. We'd brought 2, 1 for each car, since our phones were now useless. "Hey," I said back into mine, "maybe Seed Tate's still around." Marcus's voice crackled through the static. "If he is, he better have cold beer." We finally reached the clearing a little past 2 a.m. The forest opened up suddenly, revealing a wide patch of tall grass and sand, with a few skeletal trees reaching toward the sky. I parked the Tesla, headlights off. The only light came from above, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. I'd never seen stars like that before. Thousands of them. No city glow, no clouds, just endless light suspended in black. We spread out blankets and lay down, the telescope aimed upward. The night air was still, save for the occasional rustle in the brush. Marcus started playing music softly from his phone, something ambient, space-themed, fittingly enough. For a while, everything was perfect. I remember pointing out constellations, laughing about how small we were, how insane it felt that we worked at NASA and still couldn't touch what was above us. But then Sam's voice cut through the walkie-talkie. "Yo," he said, his tone sharp. "You guys seeing that?" Marcus picked up his radio. "Seeing what?" "Headlights, way back down the trail." I sat up, squinting toward the road we'd driven in on. Sure enough, there was a faint yellow glow moving between the trees. Was steady, growing brighter. Someone was coming. Now, Tate's Hell isn't exactly the kind of place people pass through. It's 40 miles from the nearest town. There's no reason for anyone to be out there at 2 a.m. Not unless they're looking for something. Jake grabbed his walkie. "Probably locals," he said, trying to sound calm. "Poachers or something." But his voice wavered. The headlights drew closer until we could make out the shape of a truck, old, rusted, maybe 1960s or 70s. It stopped about 100 yards from us. No honk, no sound, just stopped. I flashed the Tesla's headlights 3 times. A signal, a harmless "we see you" gesture. The truck didn't respond. Instead, its engine went silent. For a moment, everything froze. No crickets, no breeze, no sound at all. Then, from behind the glare of its headlights, we saw movement. 1 figure, then 2, maybe 3. They stepped out slowly, silhouettes outlined in pale yellow light. None of them spoke. "Okay, this is weird," Marcus said quietly. The humor in his voice was gone now. I picked up the walkie. "Everyone get in the cars, now." We started packing the telescope in silence, moving fast, but trying not to look panicked. The figures didn't move closer. They just stood there, watching. Then, from somewhere deeper in the forest, came the faintest whisper. Low, drawn out, garbled, like someone talking through water. I froze. Jake's eyes met mine. He'd heard it too. "Please tell me that's your radio," he whispered. But my walkie was off. We threw the rest of the gear into the cars. As I started the Tesla, I saw one of the figures take a step forward, slow, deliberate, almost curious. Then another, and then the headlights of the truck flicked off. The clearing plunged into total darkness. For a second, nobody moved. Then I slammed the pedal, the tires spinning dirt as we tore back down the trail, the Mustang's lights following behind us. The forest swallowed us whole, and the clearing, that quiet, beautiful place, vanished behind us like it had never been there. But something told me we hadn't left it behind. The forest swallowed us whole. The only thing that existed now was the dirt trail stretching ahead, twisting through blackness. My Tesla's headlights carved narrow tunnels through the trees, and behind me, Marcus's Mustang kicked up clouds of dust like a storm chasing us. "Keep your eyes on the road," Jake shouted beside me. His voice was tight, every word clipped. I was trying, God. I was trying, but my hands were shaking so bad I could barely keep the wheel straight. Behind us, far back down the trail, 2 yellow lights flickered to life. "They're moving," Marcus's voice crackled through the walkie-talkie. "That truck, it's following us." The radio hissed, distorted. For a split second, another voice bled through the static, low, muffled, not any of us, something like a whisper, something that didn't belong. Jake turned down the volume immediately. "Did you hear that?" I didn't answer, because I did. The forest around us was endless. The trail coiled through swamps and undergrowth like a living thing. Every time I thought we were making progress, another turn, another patch of waterlogged ground forced me to slow down. Then came the sound, a deep growl from behind us. That truck's engine. It wasn't fast, but it was heavy. You could feel it. The kind of engine that didn't chase. It stalked. Tesla's losing traction. Jake yelled as the car jolted over roots. This thing's not built for off-road. I knew he was right. Every dip in the trail made the tires scream. The electric hum of the motor mixed with the roar of the swamp insects until it all blurred into one nightmarish noise. "Marcus, where are you?" I barked into the walkie. Static. Then, right behind you, they're gaining on us. I looked into the rearview mirror. 2 blinding orbs of light filled it. They were too bright, too close. That truck wasn't supposed to move like that. Old, rusted, heavy. Yet somehow it glided over the rough trail like it belonged there. I pressed harder on the pedal. The Tesla lurched forward, branches whipping against the windshield. Jesus Christ! Jake shouted. "They're right on us." I stole another glance back and froze. The truck was there, yes, but there was something else. In the space between its headlights, I could just barely make out faces. Not one, multiple. Pressed against the windshield, pale and still. "Left! Go left!" Marcus yelled. "Split up." The trail forked suddenly. Instinct took over. I swerved left, gravel sprang. Marcus sped right, his red taillights vanishing into the trees. For a few seconds, I thought it worked. The truck's lights disappeared behind me. "Marcus, you good?" I called over the walkie. No answer. Then faintly through the static came his voice. "There, crackle. Right, crackle. Behind." Then silence. "Marcus?" I shouted again. "Marcus." Jake grabbed the radio. "He's out of range. We gotta keep moving." But the forest wasn't letting us go. The trail narrowed until branches scraped the sides of the car, the sound of bark screeching against metal. Then, there it was again. 2 headlights. Directly behind us. They'd chosen our path. "Are you kidding me?" Jake whispered. His hands gripped the dashboard. "How the hell did they?" The truck's horn blared, long and guttural, echoing through the swamp like a dying animal. The sound vibrated in my chest, like it was shaking the air itself. I floored it. We tore through the darkness, headlights bouncing, shadows twisting. The truck stayed with us, its lights flashing, engine growling, not chasing us to catch up, but to make us panic. "Turn the lights off!" Jake yelled suddenly. "They're tracking the light." I flicked them off without thinking. Instantly, the world disappeared. Total darkness. I couldn't see the road, couldn't see anything. The only sound was the tires grinding dirt and my own heartbeat hammering in my skull. Then came another noise. Through the black, faint and far away, like a voice carried on water. "Don't run." Jake froze. "Did you?" "Yes." I turned the lights back on. The beam sliced forward, and the road ended. We broke through the trees onto an open stretch of marshland. Mud splattered across the windshield, and the Tesla fishtailed, barely regaining balance. The headlights behind us burst through moments later, still following. "Where the hell are we?" Jake yelled. Ahead, a narrow bridge appeared, a rotting wooden crossing over a black stream. I didn't think. I just drove. The boards screamed under our tires, some snapping, others bending. The whole bridge shuddered as the truck hit it seconds later, heavy and loud. Halfway across, there was a deafening crack. The bridge split. I hit the gas, the Tesla leaping forward, skidding onto the opposite side just as the truck's front wheels collapsed into the black water below. The headlights tilted, flickered, and then went out. Silence. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, listening to the insects returning, the world slowly breathing again. Jake whispered, "Did that just happen?" I nodded, unable to answer. The walkie crackled to life suddenly. Static at first, then a faint voice. "Marcus. Guys, I'm out. I think they're gone." I almost laughed in relief. "Meet us on the main road," I said. "We're getting the hell out of here." And for a while, we believed it was over. But as I turned the car back toward the dirt trail, the headlights caught something glimmering in the mud, a metal license plate half buried in the muck. I slowed down, staring at the numbers. Tate, 1879. Jake saw it too. "Is that?" I didn't answer. I hit the pedal and didn't stop until we reached asphalt. When we finally saw the faded highway sign and the faint glow of civilization ahead, we pulled over, both cars trembling from the ride. Marcus's Mustang rolled up beside us, his face pale. "Did they follow you?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "No, but I swear to God, I heard something on the radio. Someone whispering my name." The walkie hissed one last time, soft static, almost like breathing. We turned it off. The swamp behind us was silent again, but the darkness felt alive, like it was waiting for us to turn around. We reached the Airbnb just before dawn. The sun was still hiding below the horizon, and the forest behind us looked like a shadow stretching forever. Marcus parked the Mustang beside the Tesla. No one spoke, no one moved. We just sat there, breathing hard, the engines ticking softly as they cooled. I remember stepping out first, the air thick with humidity, a smell of wet pine clinging to everything. Jake followed, eyes hollow, face pale. Marcus and Sam trailed behind. None of us wanted to admit it, but something had followed us out of that forest. The silence of Tate's hell had crawled under our skin. Inside the cabin, the air felt stale, suffocating. We locked the doors, drew the curtains, turned on every light. Still, the shadows clung to the corners. Sam finally spoke. "What the hell was that?" No one answered. He started pacing, his voice rising. "I'm serious. That truck, those people, did you see them? They shouldn't have been out there." Jake muttered. "They weren't people." The words hung in the air, heavier than anything else that night. Marcus turned toward him. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jake didn't respond. He just looked out the window, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the glass. I followed his gaze. The woods were still out there, black and endless. I half expected to see two headlights flare to life from within the trees. We stayed up until the sun came up, every sound outside making us flinch. A raccoon knocking over a trash can nearly made Sam drop his coffee. By noon, the others were trying to laugh it off, but their smiles didn't reach their eyes. Marcus insisted it was just locals messing with us, maybe drug runners. Sam argued that no truck could have moved like that, not through those roads. I didn't say much, because deep down, I knew the truth. Whatever chased us wasn't trying to catch us. It was trying to scare us away. And it worked. We packed that afternoon. None of us even mentioned going back to the clearing to grab what we'd left behind. The telescope, the blankets, we didn't care. Let Tate's hell keep them. On the drive back south, I noticed something strange. Every few miles, I'd glance in the rearview mirror and swear I saw two faint lights far behind us. Not close, not bright, just there. Always there. I told myself it was paranoia. Headlights from another car, the reflection of the sun. Anything but what I thought it was. But each time I blinked, the lights seemed to vanish, only to reappear again when I looked back. Jake saw them too. He didn't say it out loud, but I caught him staring into the mirror more than once, his jaw tight, his knuckles white. By the time we reached the city, the world felt normal again. Traffic, lights, people, the comfort of civilization. Still, when I parked the car at my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest hadn't let me go. That night, I dreamed of water, black water, and something moving beneath it, slow and deliberate, like it was searching. When I woke, the sound of an engine idling echoed faintly outside my window. I looked through the blinds. Nothing. Just empty road. Weeks passed. We went back to work, pretending nothing had happened. But none of us were the same. Marcus stopped talking about road trips. Sam quit the internship early, said he needed a break from Florida. Jake barely left his dorm. As for me, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the swamp had played tricks on us. Maybe fear made us imagine things that weren't there. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. Because one night, when I stayed late at the lab, I found something I couldn't explain. I was reviewing environmental telemetry logs from that week, routine data from the Florida Panhandle. There shouldn't have been anything unusual. But then, buried in the atmospheric readings from the night we went to Tate's Hell, I saw a pattern. 3 sharp pulses, spaced exactly 3 minutes apart. Each pulse followed by a short, high-frequency burst. Not noise, not interference. A signal. Almost like someone or something was trying to respond. The next morning, I got a text from Marcus. We need to talk. We met at a cafe near the coast. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. They found the Mustang, he said quietly. I frowned. What do you mean, found it? He took out his phone and showed me a photo. His car, or what was left of it, half sunk in a marsh, miles north of where we'd driven. Abandoned. No tracks leading to it. Like it had just appeared there. The police said maybe it had been stolen, ditched. But Marcus swore he'd parked it outside his apartment the night before. I wanted to believe him. But then he showed me another photo. Carved into the mud beside the Mustang's rear tire were 2 words, scrawled in shaky, wet strokes. Turn back. That was the last time I saw Marcus. He stopped answering calls a few days later. Moved out, according to his roommate. Vanished, just like that. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that signal in the data logs. Those 3 pulses. That faint voice on the radio whispering my name. And the story Sam told us about Tate, the man who wandered into the swamp and crawled out claiming he'd been to hell. Maybe hell wasn't fire and brimstone. Maybe it was a place, one that watches whoever dares to enter, then follows them back out. Because when I drive those back roads alone now, sometimes I catch a glimpse in the mirror. 2 dim headlights, far behind me, moving just slow enough to keep pace. And every time I blink, they vanish. But I know they'll be back. They always come back. Maybe the scariest thing about remote places isn't how empty they are, but how easily they remember. A forgotten field that still hums under an old streetlight. A swamp that whispers your name long after you've left. A mountain inn that waits quietly for you to return what you took. Places like these don't need monsters. They are the monsters. And sometimes when we go too far looking for silence, it's not silence that finds us back. If you enjoyed this journey into the quiet corners of fear, leave a like, share it with someone who loves the dark. And don't forget to subscribe, so you won't miss the next story waiting just beyond the light.